So next on our dungeon list here for TBC is the Auchenai Crypts. So one of the things about this that's interesting is kind of it gives an idea about how the Draenei are when it comes to how they deal with the dead or the undead. It's a part of their culture, but it's also something they kind of shun and hate and despise, and yet they have people in their culture that are designated as those who actually communicate with the dead. So it's a revered position, and yet it's also something that they kind of hate. It's a very interesting, strange way they do things. So this is interesting. I think there used to be more than two bosses in here, but I guess it changed over time. Huh.
A terrifying otherworldly being haunts both the spirit and physical worlds. We call it Shirak. It can only be harmed in your realm. Please, help rid us of this nightmare. Exarch Maladar performs his unholy work in the deepest part of the crypts. He poses a threat to both our worlds if he is not stopped. You must slay him for the benefit of us, dead and alive.
So as I was saying in the previous one about how this is the kind of thing that we did back there to help gain the favor of the Arakoa, you can also see this as we were trying to, continue to work on gaining the efforts of the Draenei who were here on Outland. By the way, you may notice my warrior is now 61. That's because after the last one, I decided to do a little bit of leveling with him in dungeons to also get an idea for how Fury is when it comes to current content. And let's just say Warrior seems to be in a pretty, seems to be in a good place. I was going to say Fury, but honestly, I think all three specs are in a good place because I've been seeing how all three specs do in current content. I've been encountering some Fury Warriors in Mythic Plus, and boy, they can put out some DPS, let me tell you. Also, Prot Warrior is still a very solid choice for a tank. And then there's Arms Warrior, which I wasn't sure how well they were doing until earlier tonight when we were doing our community raid event, where we were trying to get the community their AOTCs, which we did. And it was after we got in somebody who was using his Arms Warrior, because apparently that really helps in the phases against the ads during that Sarkareth fight. And it apparently made things go very smooth. Oh, hello there.
The dead do not belong in this realm. Why then?
Whoops.
Do we continually seek them out after putting them to rest? The Auchenai have turned their backs on everything that we used to stand for. They've taken to raising the dead as unholy minions. This cannot stand. Put the spirits back to rest and massacre those responsible for raising them into undeath.
So that is Shirak the Dead Watcher. Shirak was constructed by Exarch Maladar to guard over the fallen Draenei spirits who wander the Auchenai Crypts. A necrotic mass of eyes, teeth, and tentacles in this undead construct absorbs arcane energy with hungry abandon and will not suffer the living to pass. So he has Inhibit Magic, where he is surrounded by a field of anti-magic, reducing the cast speed of all players within 55 yards. The amount of reduction in cast speed is increased as the players move closer to Shirak. So if you were going to be a caster in this fight, you had to stay far back. Shirak will pull all players within 50 yards towards him when he uses Attract Magic. He has Carnivorous Bite, where he'll bite all players within 12 yards, inflicting damage every 3 seconds for 20 seconds. And Focus Fire, he will target a player's location, firing a barrage of missiles that inflicted fire damage to all players within 10 yards.
I need to get closer.
Just a little curious if I'm going to be able to see some of these abilities. One thing that's been a little difficult, I've learned, especially when I take these higher leveled characters to older content to like either farm things or get achievements, is if you need to do an achievement that requires you to get them down to a certain percentage of health, it becomes very hard to not, find a way to not instantly kill them. One of the only ways I can think of, especially if you take, like, let's say a max level 70 character now, is just take off all your gear and then just melee them. Because usually your melee attack will not do that much damage, and you can kind of whittle their health down. Otherwise, basically any ability you have will just insta-kill them. And, yeah. It looks like he's not going to do anything, so... But when I was taking this guy through, When I was taking this guy through Dungeon 61, I was having quite a bit of fun. This is why I've said that I, quite a bit enjoy Fury over Arms, because, I'm constantly getting procs for, Raging Blow and Rampage, and oh my gosh. I had a Fury Warrior teammate in a 19 Neltharian's lair this week, and he was pretty high up on the DPS chart. In fact, I think he was number 1, just beat me out on my Demon Hunter, but I looked at the breakdown of what it was that was doing the most damage for him, and Rampage did 29% of his damage, and I was just like, wow. So you get the quest and basically just clear out the skeletons here, and looks like it would be fine. I'm guessing there are some necromancers up ahead. Which, yeah, remember what I said about how this is part of an issue that, for the Draenei people when it comes to things like the undeath and necromancers? Well, those I talked about who are supposed to be dead speakers are not necessarily like these guys. Not really. They're not, say, these evil necromancers who are like, yes, I will claim all these undead servants for me, and they shall serve me. No, it's not like that. It's more like, think of when we did the Retribution Paladin weapon quest in Legion, where we had Tyrosus, ask the light to grant us an audience with Uther. It's more like that, like beseeching, just a gracious audience with someone who has passed on. So, this is Exarch Maladar, the sole living remnant of the glory that once strode the halls of Auchenai. Maladar has been driven mad by the loss of everyone and everything he ever loved. His lunatic dedication to the preservation of their memory has driven him to a mastery of the dark arts. Very much I can't deal with the loss of my loved ones, so I want to obsess over the idea of bringing them back, even though that's not going to really work. At least it wouldn't in real life. In Warcraft, that's a bit of a different story, but yeah. This is, let's just say this is not the first time I've heard this story. In fact, it reminds me of the guy from Doctor Strange. The guy who joined up with Dormammu, He lost everyone he ever loved, and so he was obsessed with, kind of either bringing them back or having us all join together so he could never be separated from them, which was his, part of his motivation for that, so that death could no longer rule over us and all that. And that's probably what Maladar is hoping for. So, he has Ribbon of Souls, where he, inflicts shadow damage to whatever his current target is. He has a Disorient within 10 yards for 2 seconds. He rips the soul from the player, reducing their damage and healing done by 50%. And the soul forms a ghostly being that will attack the player for 2 minutes. When Maladar reaches 25% remaining health, he will summon an Avatar of the Martyred, which will have Mortal Strike and Sunder armor. Huh.
You will pay with your life.
Yep, so there's the Ribbon of Souls. So unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be a way for us to quickly run back or to the entrance. So you guys have to give me a minute so we can turn these in. Unfortunately, there's not really that much in here in terms of like adding more to what's going on or the lore. However, I believe the next one will have us covered in that regard. I believe the next one we're going to do is the Mana Tombs. Yep, the Mana Tombs. And then we will do the Shadow Labyrinth. And I believe the Shadow Labyrinth has something pretty interesting for me to read, lore-wise anyway. But yeah, this one is pretty short. It's only got 2 bosses. Though I imagine, and again, I urge or encourage anybody watching this, if you have personal memories of this back in the days when Burning Crusade was like current content and you actually got to experience whatever the TBC heroics were back in the day, please by all means share what that was like, how hard that was, you know, how difficult it was back in the day with the way the game was different back then. And just like I can imagine, maybe not the first boss but the second boss with, you know, especially when you got to the Avatar, I imagine that was not an easy fight.
The dead belong in the spirit realm, just as you belong in this one.
By the way, in case you're curious about seeing when that mount dropped for me from the previous video, the Raven Lord, I actually rediscovered all the screenshots that I've taken over the past few years, whether it's on my own or whether it's with my Rarity add-on here, which is finally working, thank goodness, which will automatically take a screenshot when you get a mount to drop for you, just to help capture that moment. Now, there used to be a feature that WoW had where you could actually connect your like your Twitter account, although I guess it's now called your X account, however you say it. And although I find it funny that there is a text-to-speech thing, which maybe that's what a lot of people do, because I'm astonished sometimes how fast people can type stuff out, and I'm like, are they doing the text-to-speech thing? But there used to be an option here where you could actually connect your account so that if, let's say, something dropped or you got an achievement, you could then immediately tweet out from the game. And I thought that was a really cool option. I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. Apparently that's no longer an option. And I'm just like, aw, I kind of liked that.
Perhaps now we can finally be at peace. You have done our realm a great service. You will not be forgotten.
Got a piece that looks like the armor he was wearing. That's pretty cool. So, when we return, we will be heading to the Mana Tombs. Stay tuned.